Okay, so let's talk about the Great Depression. The Great Depression is going to begin here, all right? So why does it matter? Prosperity in the United States seemed limitless before the Great Depression struck. Then you get overproduction and agricultural problems, which contributed to the economic catastrophe. President Hoover looked to voluntary business action and limited government relief as solutions, but these efforts failed. Meanwhile, millions of Americans lost their jobs, their life savings, and then artists and writers depicted this suffering throughout this time, and people turned to lighthearted films to escape their difficult lives. Impact to date. Events of this period remain very important. Hoover's model of business-government cooperation is still influential. You get the Grapes of Wrath and Grant Wood's painting American Gothic or permanent artistic legacies from this time period. And so, let's get to the meat and potatoes. All right, so the 1920s end with kind of the election of 1928. Election of 1928 placed former head of Food Administration and Secretary of Commerce Herbert Hoover on the Republican ticket against Democratic candidate Alfred E. Smith, four-time governor of New York and the first Roman Catholic to be nominated for president. The issue of prohibition played a major role in this campaign. Should they keep it? Should they get rid of it? Hoover favored a ban on liquor sales, and Smith opposed the ban. Okay, so religious differences between the candidates had a major effect on the campaign as well. The Catholic issue led to a smear campaign against Smith, and the Republicans took full credit for the prosperities of the 1920s, and Herbert Hoover easily ended up winning the 1928 election by a landslide. Remember, the good times are still rolling on Wall Street. Okay, so you have what is called a long bull market. The stock market, which was established as a system for buying and selling shares of companies, had a long period of rising stock prices. These are known as bull markets. Okay, these prosperous times during the 1920s caused many Americans to invest heavily in the stock market. As the bull market continued to go up, many investors bought stocks on margin, making a small cash down payment. Okay, this was considered safe as long as stock prices continued to rise. Problem is, they didn't. If they began to fall, the broker could issue a margin call demanding that the investor repay the loan immediately. In the late 1920s, new investors bid prices up without looking at a company's earnings or profits. And so you have a mass speculation which occurs when investors bet on the market climbing and sold whatever stock they had in an effort to make a quick profit. All right, so now we get the Great Crash. Okay, by late 1929, you have a lack of new investors in the stock market, which causes stock prices to drop and the bull market to end. As stockbrokers advised their customers of margin calls, customers responded by placing their stocks up for sale, causing the stock market to plummet further. Stock prices fell drastically on October 29, 1929. This became known as Black Tuesday, resulting in a $10 to $15 billion loss in value, which we saw in the film yesterday. While this did not cause the Great Depression, it did undermine the economy's ability to hold out against its other weaknesses. The stock market crash weakened the nation's banks, and banks lost money on their investments, and speculators defaulted on loans. So there's not a lot of money going around. Because the government did not insure bank deposits at this time, customers lost their monies if a bank closed. So people would do bank runs, which resulted as many bank customers withdrew their money at the same time, causing the bank to collapse. Okay, so let's think of the Great Depression as a tree. So where do the roots of the Great Depression come from? Efficient machinery had led to overproduction, and Americans could not afford to buy all the goods that were being produced. So you have an uneven distribution of wealth in the United States, which added to the country's economic problems. In 1929, the top 5% of American households earned 30% of the country's income. More than two-thirds of the nation's families earned less than $2,500 a year at this time. So low consumption added to the economic problems. Workers' wages did not increase fast enough to keep up with the quick production of goods. As sales decreased, workers were laid off, resulting in a chain reaction that further hurt the economy. Many Americans bought on installment plans, it means you make a down payment and pay the rest in monthly installments. Paying off installment debts left little money to purchase other goods. And then another factor was the Hawley-Smoot tariff, which intensified the Depression by raising the tax on imports. Americans ended up purchasing less from abroad because of these high costs on imported goods. In return, foreign countries raised their own tariffs on American products, causing fewer products to be sold overseas. So instead of raising interest rates to stop the speculation, the Federal Reserve Board made the mistake. They actually lowered the interest rates, which made it worse. And so this encouraged banks to make risky loans and misled business owners into thinking the economy was still expanding. Okay, so that finishes our discussion on basically the roots of the Great Depression and where it started off at. Next, we'll talk about living through the Great Depression during the Great Depression time, which is quite interesting. If you have any grandparents or great-grandparents who are old enough to have lived through that, I suggest you really ask them and talk to them about it, because it's nothing like hearing it straight from the horse's mouth. Okay, they know it, they lived it. All right. All right, well, there will be a Edmodo quiz associated with this, so good luck with that, and I will talk to you later.